Truth, Love, Together. That's the theme of the Colson Center's 4-week-long virtual event featuring 20 of the leading Christian worldview thinkers of our time. We're now into Module 4, Telling the Truth in Love. And today on the BreakPoint Podcast, we have an outstanding presentation by cold case detective and apologist extraordinaire J. Warner Wallace, entitled The Case for Speaking Unpopular Truths. At the end of the podcast, I'll have more information for you about our virtual event, Truth, Love, Together, or you could simply go to conference.colsoncenter.org to register. Now, here's J. Warner Wallace.
Thanks for joining me for this session of Wilberforce Weekend. My name is J. Warner Wallace. I'm a homicide detective here in Los Angeles County, and I'm also a senior fellow with the Colson Center. Some of you know my work. I'm a cold case detective, and you know my work from either cold case Christianity or God's crime scene or forensic faith. And a lot of us have met each other before in a Wilberforce weekend or on doing the Colson Fellows training of one nature or another. For those of you who don't know me, let me just briefly introduce myself. I have been working in Los Angeles County for a number of years, working cold case homicides. These are just the kinds of cases. Look, only a homicide has no statute of limitations. So if we don't solve a case like that, a homicide, we can reopen it years later. If you like cases you've seen on Dateline, well, you may have seen some of my cases because I think I've been on Dateline more than anybody else in the country. And that skill set is the kind of skill set that you learn certain things about the nature of truth and about unpleasant truths related to crimes that we work, because all of these cold cases are homicides. Now, my son has been doing the same thing for a number of years, working as an investigator at the same agency. As a matter of fact, he has the same name that I have. We weren't creative when we chose names for each other, and he's using the same tools that I did. I used the same tools with a slightly different title than he's using. I used them earlier, and I learned all this, of course, from my dad, who also used the same tool set as a police officer years before me. All of us have had the same name. So we have been together working and talking about the nature of truth and the nature of working investigation, the nature of proclaiming truths to juries. And this is something you learn as you work this kind of profession. And as a matter of fact, a couple of years ago, I was asked to do a scene in a movie called God's Not Dead 2. And in that scene, I just tried to make the case for the reliability of the scriptures of the New Testament. And you might think that that is not something that would be all that controversial. Like, in other words, it wouldn't be offensive maybe, but of course, you know, it is in our culture. It's more and more offensive to make a claim that Christianity is true. And more importantly, that Jesus might have had something to say about today's hot topic issues. And that's what this talk is going to be about. I think that part of the problem with us proclaiming the truth as Jesus would have told the truth, is that we know that the nature and our understanding of truth in our culture has shifted. And that's what I want to start with. Just let me give you an object, a kind of a thought experiment, okay? If I was to ask all of you, in whatever town you might live, to join me on a one-day missions trip, an afternoon trip, where we're going to go downtown in your favorite city, whatever's closest to you, and we are going to proclaim the truth to people who have never heard the truth on the streets of your hometown. I think a lot of us would say, okay, I'm game for that. I've done one-day missions trips. I've done some street evangelism. I know how to do this. I can proclaim the truth. And even though I might be a little bit uncomfortable, I'm willing to proclaim the truth. But what if I told you that the truth we were going to proclaim was going to be the truth about your favorite dessert? I think most of us, if that was the case, if we were told we're going to go downtown and spend a day proclaiming the truth to people who have never heard the truth, and the truth is going to be whatever your favorite dessert is, I think most of us would say that's a stupid trip. I'm not going. I mean, what's the point in that? Why would we spend time proclaiming something that we all know is simply a matter of personal opinion? I have an opinion about this. I think the chocolate chip cookies are the absolute best dessert. But that's my personal opinion. You know it. You may have a different opinion about what your favorite dessert is. And we know that these personal opinions reside in the persons who hold them. In other words, I, as the subject, hold this truth to be true. And that's why we call these kinds of personal opinions subjective truth claims. They are held by subjects. Now, let's think this over again and then just reimagine our trip. Our trip is not going to be to go downtown and proclaim the truth about the best dessert, but instead is going to be to go downtown and proclaim the truth about the cure for tuberculosis, because there are people downtown who are living and don't even know that they've got TB that's presenting as one function or another. As a matter of fact, some people, it sometimes presents like COVID-19. It presents like the flu. It presents with the upper respiratory. It can very much be the same presentation. But this has got a cure. There's a cure for TB. Well, wouldn't you like to know what the cure is? I mean, what if we went downtown and the thing we were going to proclaim was the cure for something that we know is killing people? And they don't even know they have it. They might even think, oh, yeah, I'm just taking NyQuil. I feel better, a little bit better. And on a day-to-day basis, maybe my NyQuil will cure it. Well, this is a different kind of trip. And you recognize that it's a different kind of trip because you know that there is a cure for TB. It's grounded in this cocktail that starts with isoniazid. It's an antibiotic. And by the way, isoniazid in this cocktail will cure TB regardless of who you are or what you think is going to cure TB, regardless of your personal opinion. This is true for everyone. Isoniazid cures TB. That's true. And by the way, that's because it's not grounded in a personal opinion. The truth about isoniazid is grounded in the thing called isoniazid, that object. This is why these kinds of truth claims are called objective truth claims. They are grounded in objects, not subjects. Your opinion cannot change what cures TB. But the object itself can cure TB. It's grounded in the object. One way to tell the difference is simply to ask yourself, can your opinion make it so? If your opinion is powerless to make it so, then it's probably an objective truth claim. Now, I bring this up because as we talk about speaking unpopular truths, we have to make sure that we don't think that the culture is starting to believe this, that everything's a matter of perspective, a matter of your personal experience versus my personal experience. You may have your view of traditional marriage, but I have a different view of marriage. You have your view of gender, I have my view of gender. And everything is a matter of subjective personal choice. I sometimes think that we don't even share the gospel with people, the truth about how to be saved, because we've fallen into this sense that everything is a matter of personal choice. You know, your neighbors they're very abiding, very devout Mormons. They have a nice life. They believe in Jesus, don't they? Isn't that good enough for them? Why would I want to go over there and shake that tree when my Mormon neighbors are so sweet and they believe in Jesus too, don't they? It's working for them. This is working for me. Do you see how we can fall into this kind of thinking? Really? So are you thinking that the truth about God, the gospel, is a matter of subjective opinion? That your opinion makes it so? Or is it just that there's a claim out there that our opinion is powerless to change? It's an objective claim. Look, I think sometimes we don't share the gospel with people because we treat the gospel like a cookie instead of a cure. And that's the danger, right? Now, one of the kinds of claims related to our Christian beliefs, we make claims about Jesus, we make claims about God, but we make claims about moral truths, claims about morality. Are these kinds of claims about morality, simply a matter of personal opinion, even our opinion? Let me put one on the screen for you. Premarital sex is immoral. That's a claim. Is this a subjective claim or an objective claim? Well, the only way for it to be subjective would be if it's grounded in subject. So, for example, is this a matter of personal opinion? What if the claim was slightly different? You said, well, I think that having sex with minors is perfectly fine. Okay, well, if it's a matter of personal opinion, how could I dissuade you? In other words, if you get to decide what is morally true and you hold that view, and I say, no, that's not right, you shouldn't do that. That's called pedophilia. Well, okay, wait a minute. Now, that's just your personal view. My personal view is equal to your personal view. You can't tell me that yours matters more than me. You'd be saying that you as a person matter more than me. I mean, no, that's not true. So therefore, leave me alone. I hold this view. You hold different view. So what? It's a matter of personal opinion. Is that how this works? The other way this could be a subjective claim would be if a group of persons, a group of subjects held it to be true. But that's the case if one culture thinks it's okay to sleep with minors, and there are many cultures around the world that do, we would be powerless as a different culture to tell them they're wrong. Any kind of abuse, if they accept the abuse as perfectly fine for a certain category of people, we would be powerless to say you ought not do that. Do you see the problem? If moral truths are simply subjective, then even a group of subjects, you can't adjudicate between two groups. Now, we know we ought to be able to adjudicate between two groups. We know that certain things are morally reprehensible, and this law transcends the groups. Where does it come from? It's objectively rooted. And by the way, once you discover that something is objective rather than subjective, the only thing left to do is to decide if it's true or false. But here's a more important issue. If a claim is objective and not subjective, we ought to be talking about those kinds of claims. I get it. You don't want to spend a lot of time talking about your favorite dessert. I don't blame you. But that's because it's subjectively grounded. But if this is a claim like TB, like the cure for TB, and I happen to have an opinion that NyQuil will cure my TB, I would hope you would step in and correct me, because objective claims are the kinds of claims we ought to be talking about with each other. And that's why this issue of talking about and speaking unpopular moral truths is so important. Because if moral truths are not a matter of personal perspective, and they're not a matter of cultural consensus, then they're the kinds of objective claims we ought to be talking about. And that's why I think it's important for us to get in the game. I want to show you one way in which we've confused this. And I just want to play for you a clip from a couple of years ago. It was a Golden Globes Award with Oprah Winfrey, where she talked about the Me Too movement. And she talks about why it's important and why she's so proud of her fellow actresses for stepping up and speaking about what was happening. Listen to her speech and see if you catch the way she thinks about truth and why this doesn't work.
What I know for sure is that speaking your truth is the most powerful tool we all have. And I'm especially proud and inspired by all the women who have felt strong enough and empowered enough to speak up and share their personal stories.
Okay, do you see the problem with that? This isn't a matter of your truth or my truth. If that was the case, then the producers in Hollywood could simply say, well, look, you want the job. I have the job. If you want the job, you're going to have to sleep with me to get the job. That's how it's always been done. And by the way, we have more power than you, and we actually outnumber you. So if you want to do this, you'll have to do it our way. That's our truth. No, we actually think that there's something reprehensible about the behavior that transcends both the actress and the producer, or the director, whoever's doing this. We think that this is an objective claim about reality, an objective claim, an objective moral claim. And we believe that this transcends both groups, both sides. If that's the case, we cannot talk about it as though it's your truth or my truth or their truth. We have to talk about it as though it's the truth, because that's what it is. Now let's turn a corner. I think we both see that there are a number of claims about truth, about moral truth, that are unpopular right now in culture. A number of hot topic issues, and you can see them right here on the screen. Now think about this for a second. These are difficult to talk about, especially from a Christian worldview, from a Christian perspective. It seems as though the entire culture is against the teaching of Jesus on some of these major issues. And by the way, if a culture opposes the teaching of your master, make no mistake about it, they oppose your master. And they oppose those who follow the master. I get it. Let's go back to our list, though. One way that people, even within the church, have started to morph their views toward that of the culture is to make a statement like this, that Jesus never said anything about these issues. I cannot find passages in the scriptures in the New Testament in which Jesus is teaching on these issues. Okay, so that means that he had no view of this? But you realize that Jesus also never taught about these issues. Yet you don't think it's okay to engage in any of these behaviors. You think these are wrong. Well, if they're wrong, why didn't Jesus talk about it? Well, there's a couple reasons why Jesus might not talk about something, while you and I might not. One is simply that I have no view on this. I have no opinion. I don't think that's what it is. The other is that, do I really need to cover this with you guys? I mean, this is so self-evident, so obvious. If you're part of this group to begin with, you ought to. Do I need to talk about that too? Come on, guys. You should know how I feel about that. As a matter of fact, I think a strong argument can be made that Jesus did say something about all of these categories, all of these behaviors. Let me show you what he said. He said this. He said, do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I haven't come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. In other words, if you want to know what I think or what God says about these topics, read the words of Moses and the prophets, because basically I agree and affirm and personify what they said. Yeah, Jesus actually did say something about all of this. He basically said, I affirm what Moses wrote about all of this. And if you don't like what Moses wrote about it, you're not going to like what I'm going to say about it either. As a matter of fact, he said this, for truly I tell you, until heaven and earth disappear, not the smallest letter, not the least stroke of a pen, will by any means disappear from the law until everything is accomplished. Therefore, anyone who sets aside one of the least of these commands and teaches others accordingly will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever practices and teaches these commands will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. Now, do you see what's happening here? He's basically saying that, yeah, if you wonder what I'm thinking, I'm thinking what's in the law is still what's in the law, and I'm affirming what's in the law. You're not going to get around it, number one, because you think I haven't ever spoken about that, because, in fact, I have, and you're not going to get around it because there's lots of things I didn't speak about, and if you didn't think those were good to do, then you shouldn't think that this is good to do. Let me give you another way, though, that I think some Christians try to navigate and bend the moral code in Scripture toward the code that's been developed and accepted by the culture. I see it here all the time. Oh, but the gospel authors, they weren't aware of modern science and philosophy and gender theory and whatever it might be. Okay. I get it. I hear this all the time that, Paul's writing to a first century audience, giving the limited understanding of a first century Jew who didn't understand anything about what we understand now in terms of science and the science of gender and all of this stuff they're going to say. Okay, fine. Let's think about that for a minute. Have you noticed this? Miracles don't occur evenly in Scripture. If you start with the opening pages of Genesis and work all the way through to the end of the New Testament, if you could chart out a timeline, you would find that miracles don't occur every 5 years or every 1 year. It's not like an even spread of miracles throughout the entire Old and New Testament. In fact, the miracles are bunched around largely for individuals. You'll see them around Moses, Elijah, Elisha, and Jesus. As a matter of fact, about 80% of all the miracles are centered on two characters in Scripture, Moses and Jesus. Why? Why is that the case? Well, because the miracles are not just a matter of frivolity or God trying to impress you. Instead, miracles authenticate a messenger. Miracles always authenticate the messenger. They are there to be a signal that this is somebody who has the authority of God. He is speaking for, he's working the miracles first and then heralding. He'll heal, Jesus would heal, and then herald. And we know that this is meant to be an attestation of the authority of the messenger because Peter tells us this in the book of Acts where he says, Men of Israel, listen to these words. Jesus the Nazarene, a man attested to you by God with miracles and wonders and signs which God performed through him in your midst, just as you yourselves know. Miracles authenticate a messenger. Now, why that's important is if you think there's a new message from God on all those hot topic issues in culture, then there ought to be a messenger who's been authenticated by miracles who would appear and give us the new message. Who's that? I don't see that guy. And until I see that guy, I'm going to default back to the guy who last was authenticated by miracles. And that would be who? Oh yeah, Jesus of Nazareth. That guy, whatever he said, it hasn't changed. And if you think that he didn't know the science, he is the author of science, okay? He is the author of the facts, of the things you are calling law, natural law. God is the author of those things, and Jesus is, he demonstrated he was God through the resurrection. Now, I got one last parting thing to ask you, though. Why would you be surprised, even for an instant, that the teaching of Jesus is going to be unpopular, that if you embrace the teaching of Jesus, that you will have to speak unpopular truths, that if you embrace and proclaim the teaching of Jesus, that you will yourself also be unpopular? Think about this for a second. Jesus, when he saw the crowd, he went up on the mountain, right? And after he sat down, his disciples came to him and he began to teach them. He opened his mouth saying to them, Blessed are the poor in spirit, and those who mourn, and those who are gentle, and those who are hungering and thirsting for righteousness, and those who are merciful, and those who are pure in heart, and those who are peacemakers, and those who are persecuted for the sake of righteousness. And then he turns to his disciples and he says, Blessed are you when people insult you and persecute you and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Not if they do, when they do. You adopt the view of Jesus. You start to proclaim. By the way, he says, rejoice and be glad. Don't fret about it. Don't wonder how I'm going to do this. Rejoice and be glad as you're doing it, because in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you. Now think about that. Well, that's been happening forever. Why? Because clearly when you speak the words of God into a world of humans, you can expect to get spanked. This is what happens. Fallen humans don't want to hear the word of God. But by the way, you're supposed to be the salt of the earth. If the salt's become tasteless, how's it going to be made salty again? It's good for nothing. It's to be thrown out and trampled underfoot by men. You're the light of the world. A city set on a hill can't be hidden, nor does anyone light a lamp and stick it under a basket, but on the lampstand, and it gives light to all who are in the house. We're called to be salt and light. And nobody wants to have salt rubbed in the wounds sometimes, right? Although it does heal. And nobody wants to have the light shine on their darkness when they're trying to hide. So, what I typically tell young people, I'm going to tell you. It's easy to say that I am a Christ follower. And I do say that. But at times I have to ask myself, is that true, or am I really more a Christ admirer, a Jesus admirer, rather than a Jesus follower? I see sometimes in the church we find ourselves as we say we follow Christ, but we're not really Jesus followers, we're Jesus admirers. And then if we start to modify the words, we're kind of like Jesus modifiers. And sometimes we'll just cut out entire things that Jesus said, and we're like Jesus redactors. Look, we are called to be Jesus followers. And that means that, you're going to have to take on the uncomfortable, unpopular truths. And then when you are insulted and when you are persecuted and when people falsely say evil against you because of Jesus, you're going to go, woohoo! That's happening because of Jesus. That's happening because of our relationship to Jesus. That's happening because of our connection to Jesus. And that's something we ought to celebrate. There's no clever tactic for this. I don't want to add offense. I want to have the character of Jesus, but be bold enough to reflect the mind and heart of Jesus on the most important and controversial issues in the culture today. So I wish I could give you a kind of a slick technique that'll help this to go easier. But if it's going to go easy, we're probably not doing it right. There's a sense in which this truth from Jesus is disruptive enough that we're going to cause an offense, not because of hopefully our own nature and how we present it, but instead because of the otherworldly nature, the holy nature of the teaching of Jesus of Nazareth. I hope this kind of helps you at least to understand that part of this is the expectation of trouble. And once I know it's coming, it's a little easier. I'm not going to be surprised by it. Don't you be surprised by it either. We have a duty to proclaim and speak unpopular truths. Thanks for joining me on this session. And I hope you got a lot out of this whole entire experience this year at Wilberforce Weekend.
Thanks everyone for listening to the BreakPoint Podcast. Come to conference.colsoncenter.org to register for free, and you can watch the rest of Module 4 with an introduction by John Stonestreet, Lee Strobel on becoming stronger salt and brighter light, Pramod Haq on being a public witness in an unbelieving culture, and Obianuju Ekiocha on why telling the truth is an act of love. Again, that's conference.colsoncenter.org. For the Colson Center, I'm Shane Morris.